Hello, everybody. We'll get started in a little bit. You can sign into the agenda if you have any items you want to add today to talk about. That would be groovy. We'll get started in a few minutes. Hello, Arnaud.
Good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you, sir. Watch out, a plane's going to land on your head.
Oh, yeah, you can see it. My little toy.
You fly model planes?
Oh, I haven't done it in a while now, but yeah, I like it.
Where I went to college, I lived next door. My dorm was next door to the football stadium, American football. And every weekend they had a model aviation club and they were allowed in the stadium to fly their planes. It was kind of neat to see.
Yeah, I'm not a very good pilot, but you know, enough to have fun.
You're alive. Doesn't that count? You're alive, so you're a good pilot.
No, we're talking model airplanes. Although I'm also a paragliding pilot, and so that's for real.
All right, folks, if you have any opens you'd like to discuss today, please add that in the open section. Primarily today, I would like to talk about a presentation. I just gave a sneak peek to the governance committee. They got promoted. They're no longer a subcommittee. I just share with the governance committee, get your all's feedback if we need to adjust anything before that goes more broadly, and then I'll shoot it out to assorted mailing lists. I hate sharing in Zoom. Let's see here. Make that and big in that. All right, can you see the goose?
Yes.
All right. So I had shot this out. There's an issue and I had sent it out to Slack and whatnot, but I put together this brief presentation kind of summarizing who we are and what we're doing, and kind of summarizing our past work with the assorted diagrams and kind of views we've been toiling away at. So I was curious if anyone had the opportunity to look at this, if they had any thoughts now, or do you want me to walk through the deck right now?
To admit, I've not seen it.
Yeah, please walk through it.
Okay. Well, I feel that it is hard to know what the OpenSSF is doing, and it's hard to know how to participate. Enter the Diagrammer Society, which is a fresh-faced group of young open source enthusiasts here that have assembled to create a series of images to convey all the great work the foundation does. And our objective, which is we're trying to clearly and simply provide examples of how we're organized, what challenges our assorted work efforts are looking to solve, and how those different components relate to each other. This is the speeds and feeds of our group. I forgot to add, I actually have been collaborating with Bressers and the SBOM Everywhere group. I got them kickstarted with a SBOM map. So I'll add that to our work. And the narrative here is we all agreed that there is no one way to represent the complexity and diversity that's going on in the foundation. And so ultimately we decided we'll probably need to have multiple diagrams. And I put the caveat out there that these existing diagrams are typically mock-ups or first drafts, and they will absolutely can be further refined and developed or adjusted to meet the specific needs of the viewer. And ideally, the final work product would be like a dynamic interaction that a viewer could look at and click on and be able to go straight to resources. If I wanted to learn more about salsa, I could hover over the supply chain group and be able to go right to salsa's repo or webpage, for example. Oops, hey, wait. So our first view is the hierarchy view that Mr. Wheeler helped provide. This should be very familiar to most people that have worked in a large corporation. This shows the structure of the org and how some of the components relate. Does not provide a lot of detail about what we're doing, but that definitely could be augmented. Like if you hovered over the public policy committee, we could blow out and give an explanation what this group does and provide links to notes or repos or meeting times. So this was one of the first views, and actually in the call with the governance committee, this was the first one that they really liked. The next view was the bubbles view. This shows a little bit more detail about what the work from a working group perspective, what those activities are, and kind of encapsulates what the projects and initiatives and other efforts are within the particular working groups. And I put the caveat that all of these are kind of first draft. And if there was somebody had a perspective, they wanted the end users to be purple and not pink, we certainly could make adjustments like that. Or if we wanted to move the end users closer to the supply chain group, for example, because they're really good friends. We have that ability to kind of show relationships between the different components.
I'm sure we can fight over the colors though.
Oh, believe me, I guarantee that will be a long and aggressive debate. And then you have the whole accessibility and usability lens we also would look at this with, being sensitive to like people with neurodiversity or color blindness. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about the color that'll happen someday. The next view was the CI/CD overview, another diagram that David had shared with us. And this one appealed to a couple of the GB members that had come up through development, where they like, I understand CI/CD. This problem speaks to me. So they found this very appealing. But the power of this diagram is you have a process, and you can showcase all the different activities that relate to a particular piece of the process. Another process is SDLC, where you could have the SDLC Ouroboros snake eating itself arrow. And then as you hover over a particular area, working group, you could explode that out and show details therein. And each one of these, whether it's the CI/CD, SDLC, I have a DevSecops proposal. All of these will need to have considerable conversations, probably with the working groups and initiative owners, to make sure we get things placed appropriately or show that they span multiple areas appropriately. But again, this is first draft. If somebody likes this or any of the diagrams, we all can dig in and embellish it a little more. The view I didn't get to was the DevSecops infinity loop, because my friends at Microsoft Visio fail completely at laying arrows over top of other arrows. So I showed, instead of the infinity loop, I listed off the 7 kind of widely agreed DevSecops activities, and I used the racetrack metaphor. So you could envision the infinity loop, and then you would overlay this racetrack arrows, like you're at a racetrack, a horse race or a dog race or a car race, and you would have the working group or activity span the phases or activities that are applicable. So for example, best practices, I personally feel touches upon all 7 of the DevSecops activities, whereas something like the securing critical projects might only touch on release, configure, and monitor. All open for debate. But again, just to kind of give people an idea of how this might be laid out, the theater of the possible in your minds here. The next diagram was Matt and Arnaud's mind map, which I think probably will not be our end deliverable, but I personally feel this will be very useful in working with the TAC as we realign to a new vision, and we start to work on things like the Sterling tool chain. I feel this diagram offers a significant amount of value in showing this is the state of things. These groups are missing READMEs or charters. These projects that say they're part of the OpenSSF actually jump out to external websites. Does the foundation feel that's a problem or not? So I think this will be very useful tactically in trying to help review areas of where we have duplication of effort, or we have kind of unclear goals, like some of the groups kind of sound the same. Maybe we just combine them. I don't know. So I think this is very practical that we can leverage this, but I don't think, and most of the group agreed the last hour, that this probably wouldn't be like a externally consumable thing in the near term, at least. We have the persona view, where you have as a particular person, I have these problems that I want to solve. So as an open source developer, I need to write more secure code. So we route those folks to the best practices working group. Yay. Or if they want to know how to scan their code, we would route them over to the tooling group, or potentially straight to the scorecards or all-star projects directly. So you have a lot of opportunity there. So we would need a list of personas that the foundation agrees upon and feels we want to address. And then we would want to start to think about the problems those particular stakeholder groups have, and then agree about what efforts are applicable. We have the vision mapped view. This is something where in the end of last year, Bob had started an effort to revise the tax vision for the foundation. So I took that, and there were 4 clear statements, and I just kind of eyeballed it and lined up our groups. And I think, hey, we're an influential advocate for efforts that are aligned with our mission. So I think end users helps with that, and public policy and governance. So we can kind of debate if this is an approach we want to go, kind of lining things up to a strategic vision or mission. We can line people up like this. And ultimately, that all needs to be finished before we can start to debate about what goes where. And one thing we've talked about several times, but never have had the energy to get around to, is the trail map. The CNCF trail map, I think, is a very powerful graphic. It does not try to show all of that foundation's activities, but it focuses in on several themes. It has the metaphor of a map, and you're going on a journey. So we could agree upon a metaphor we wanted to do. And I said the last meeting, maybe our metaphors were the geese that lay the golden eggs, and we'd have a bunch of eggs laying around, and you could click on the egg, and then maybe a little goose hatches out, and that tells you what the hell that thing is all about. But we would need to agree upon what the theme is and what the waypoints are. So this would be a very opinionated view of the foundation, and would not necessarily seek to encompass everything. But again, ran out of time and didn't do it yet. But if somebody likes that, we can spend some time on putting that together. And this is where I left that group with, what are our next steps? I asked them, did they find this useful? And that small group of people in the governance community said, yes, this was useful. I asked them, did any of these pictures spark joy? And they noted that both the hierarchy and the CI/CD views were very interesting to them. And then we wandered around a little bit, and we got kind of off on what was actually personas, that we have these problems we're trying to solve for different constituents. And we ended up kind of talking about that, but not about that diagram in particular. So yes, some of them were very interesting to the group. And they ultimately agreed that, yes, there will be no one diagram that solves everybody's needs, and we'll need to have several. And yeah, that was great. We didn't have, I didn't get like marching orders about what they would like to see next, like what specific outcomes they wanted to solve. So I think we'll probably go back. I think I got drafted into talking to the actual full governing board on this. Hopefully not next week, we'll see. But if so, I'll make do. And then ultimately, I think at the end of this process, once we have our handful of diagrams, we would probably want to engage professional graphic designer to embellish it, to do the colors, to make sure it matches our desired palette and had our iconography that we wanted, and helped with like animations and whatever else, if this goes into a web page or whatever it ends up being. And then finally, all the designs would need to be vetted for accessibility and usability issues. That came across very clear in the first time I proposed this to the TAC mailing list. I got a lot of statements around, we need to make sure we address people that have color blindness or are neurodiverse. So we need to make sure we take those perspectives into account before we finish our final products. And that is that. What do you think?
Impressive, Crumb. Congratulations. I mean, lots of credit to you for putting all this together. I think it was an amazing collection that you put together. And, I think it's great to try and get feedback from a broader, population, than just the few of us who call in every other week or so. So I think that's great. I agree normally with the fact that, there are types of diagrams that I think are more like useful for us as tools, right? I was very interested in the one you put together, but like, based on Bob's like mission for the goals for the week, and how all these different activities relate to those goals. This is the kind of stuff I don't think, the larger population is going to care much about that point of view, but I think for us, it's a very useful thing to have.
Thank you. Jay, long time no talk. It's been hours.
Jesus, once again, we've got to stop meeting like this. One question I would have after I saw this, and I guess it's great for us to talk about here, is maintaining these. It sounds like when I say that, what comes next sounds like something. It's going to take a lot of work to maintain these, but as new initiatives spin up across the working groups, as more working groups start collaborating on other initiatives, and they start these diagrams, not all of them, but at least the ones that are more detailed, are going to have to be freshened up in real time in order for them to maintain relevance. So
Agreed.
maybe that's something that we need to think about. How are we going to? Are we going to hold each working group? Once they get into a workable state, are we going to have the working groups update them, or are we going to have liaisons from this group reaching out, or in each working group meeting? I mean, we all, outside of Jennifer, we all are waving in and out of everybody's meetings. Is that going to be a task of ours to make sure we bring back here what's happening, and then one person gets assigned to do the updates? That's something we need to talk about, think about.
I agree. And early on, David had shown us there was a Linux open source tool that you drop a bunch of stuff into a file and it auto generated the diagram. And it was very simple, kind of like the hierarchy view. It wasn't very graphically exciting, but it eliminated some of the upkeep. And that's something we definitely need to decide. And that's why I would prefer not to have to maintain like 20 diagrams. So maybe if we can eventually kind of narrow that down to maybe 2 or 3, and then we need to decide how that's going to happen. Is it staff? Is it volunteers? Is it the working group's responsibility to provide the feedback? And how do we get that feedback? Because I know from the time that Matt started the mind map, things changed immediately, like the next week and the week after, and then our node jumped in and it was a little different. And when I did a bunch of my diagrams, like the whole end user working group came into being and wasn't in my initial diagram. So we need to figure out, that'll be a problem we will need to figure out. I completely agree. Mr. Wheeler. Mute.
Hey, Oh, look, the most popular phrase in 2022 is 2023.
You're on mute. No, you are. No, no. That is that the phrase. You're fine. You're good.
Yes, you're on mute. I expect it'll be a popular phrase in the future too. Okay, so yeah, I think that making it sustainable should be a critical part of the decision of which diagrams to go with. And I'm pretty flexible in how we do it. I think there are some advantages if we can make it easy to manage via GitHub. But whatever it is, please let's just make it easy enough because things are going to change. And as long as, yeah, and I don't mind, it has to be changed here and there. Like if we did both the hierarchy and the salsa mapping, um, I'm not sure a tool can easily do that. And you know what, hand doing it here and there is okay. I don't think that's a crisis. It's just it needs to be clear. This is what you need to do, and you can do it in a couple minutes as long as it's not a radical change, and off you go. Because we obviously have jobs other than maintaining diagrams.
Yeah, and that'll be a challenge. Like if we select one or two to go out to a graphic designer, there's cost involved and there's latency in that request. Can't be immediately updated. Whereas like if it's a Visio diagram or a paint doodle, I can GIMP that up or Visio it in a fairly short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, you can see what I've done, and I guess in some sense there's the risk of sunk cost. I did this, so I like it this way, obviously. But having a couple simple diagrams that you can edit within Google's presentation format means grab, move, go. You can make other people edit it, and probably and the reason those were developed were in part because we have to explain to other folks what the heck OpenSSF is. So having a generic, hey, every time you need to describe OpenSSF, here's the current version of the diagrams to explain it. That's kind of been helpful. So, I do think that's a use case is explaining to others. And if I can just grab it and go, that would be helpful for somebody who tries to pitch to others. Hey, come join this awesome group, and every once in a while people listen to me. So
yeah. Well, and I also don't want to be a waiter and be waiting around for someone to send me their order. Hey, we added 27 new working groups. When are you guys going to have that diagram done? I don't necessarily want to. I didn't sign up to be the service provider for infinity years.
Yes. But if we can say, hey, you made a new working group or whatever, a new project, here's what you do, click, 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 you're done. As long as it's simple, I think people can do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts or comments on the presentation or any of the work we've done to date?
I'm really excited. I think you've done such a great job. This is such a great start. I'm really looking forward. I am really looking forward to using these diagrams or diagram in different marketing materials, communications. I think our slides that we can share and have others share as well to get involved, definitely for the website as well. I think a couple of those versions could work well. Maybe even something interactive where someone can kind of drill down, so you want to do X, and then kind of it takes the path of where they can get involved. So I think it's really exciting and nice job. It's just great.
Good job, group.
Actually, Jennifer just mentioned something I think we ought to make more explicit, which is the format of the results. I can see at least two places these diagrams need to end up. One is OpenSSF website. I would love to be able to see the diagrams, click on it, click on a working group image and show up there, click on a project, show up there. And the other is presentations. Jennifer, I'm sure you have other media you have to present in occasionally as well, but just at least for those two, that's, those are the ones I immediately use. And I imagine you want to put stuff in print media of some kind eventually.
Yeah. You want to hand out And I think like something more high level. And I think that's why having like maybe at least two different kind of views, like a very high level view and then something a little more detailed as well for different uses. And then, at whatever point this society is ready to move on to design, we have a creative services team. I've given them a heads up that something might be coming down the road. So, they have a creative brief that I think may be good to get started and start thinking about the forms and so forth. I mean, there's not one specifically for a diagram, but there's one for a website that could be easily altered. And I think that could be another place that might be valuable to look at.
Yeah, and then we want to make sure we're in line with like the marketing guidelines of fonts and palette and spacing and all that other nonsense. We're on brand.
Yes.
So practically
to help with
speaking,
that.
I mean, yeah, practically speaking, I mean, as I said, I think a lot of those diagrams are interesting for different reasons, and I'm very grateful you put that together. But as Jay said, I mean, maintaining this stuff is nearly impossible. So for that reason, we have to, even if it's hard, we have to narrow it down to, I don't know, I can imagine like 2 or 3 that would be meant to be published at most. And then maybe one along the lines of the mind map or the kind of stuff where it's more like for internal consumptions to work with which doesn't have to be maybe as polished, because that's like, I think the biggest challenge, by the way, with the mind map that Matt started is that it depends on a tool that is not free software. We've been using it on an evaluation basis. And it's pretty clear the license says that, you cannot basically publish the output of that in a kind of like, as if it's like a product user. So,
yeah, and that diagram is so dense. A layperson is going to be confused and turned off. But like if we're trying to align things to the vision, I think that'd be very useful to kind of, so we could group things by themes and whatever else. But yeah, agreed.
I mean, to be fair, Google Docs is proprietary also, but there's no restriction on the use of anything. I mean, anybody can show up and collaboratively edit and publish.
Yeah, you don't sign a license to use it that says you cannot use the output of this tool,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a big difference.
That's what this Xmind app says,
Yikes.
And that's
okay.
There are a multitude. We talked about tools in the beginning, Lucid Chart and Visio and graphic programs. There's a lot of different choices we can make, and that's another thing. Is hopefully we all are in the OpenSSF forever, but we might not be, and it would be tragic to have an artifact created that the next people that are carrying on the work didn't have access to. So we need to be cognizant of that.
Right, which actually creates a tension. So Jennifer, I realize you've offered up the graphic services folks who can do awesome stuff, but they can use a variety of tools. Maybe we should talk about not just, hey, wouldn't it be cool if it looked pretty, but it would be cool if it looked pretty and we could edit it easily without further issues, downloading a special tool, that sort of thing. I mean, it could just be as simple as please put the result in Google Docs spreadsheets, not spreadsheets, the presentation program. I forgot what they call it.
Slides.
Thank you. Word disappeared. So, but I mean, but again, I think sustainability is more important than pretty.
And maybe ultimately we decide we want a trail map style thing that gets kicked out to creative, and that is curated there, but other artifact like we would use in presentations and whatnot might be something more accessible, just like shapes in a Google slide or whatever.
By the way, the two are not in conflict. Creative has done Google Slides before for me. They've generated SVGs for me. So there's not necessarily, but that might be one of the things to talk to is not just, hey, we need this pretty, but we need pretty and editable.
Right. Well, and there's cost. You know, I deal with Creative all the time in my day job, and it's, you know, it's not free. So again, how do we want to proceed? We want to lean into some artifacts that are for fee, or, you know, rely upon the good intentions of volunteers.
And I mean, even if you hire some external services, depending on the term of the contract, you can modify the output or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope Jennifer worked that out.
Is there a policy? I mean, maybe, and this might be well, ask you too, Proba and Bob. Is there a policy that against purchasing a license, specifically for this particular group to work on these type of items, right? I don't know, one of those.
No, I'm not aware of any policy against. That said, if we have to have 10 people edit it and it's a $10,000 license, it's going to be a challenge for some of us.
Well, I would say it'd be a tag your it type. I would say maybe one license and then a tag your it, right, for doing all the updates. I know that can get funky, especially if that person has to leave, and then now you're out there like that. I get it. I'm spitballing here. I feel like, you know,
I think that's a good point, Jay. I thought along the same line before when I was thinking about this license, when I looked into the license of Xmind, my app that we used. And I thought the same as like, well, if we really wanted, I suppose we could buy a few licenses. And you know, at the end of the day, you can, if you have the license version, you can export in all sorts of different formats that free you from the tool. But of course, the free version does not allow you to do that.
Here was another thought, right? I mean, all things being nonprofit, right? What happens if we reached out to MindMap and said to them something crazy like, hey, you know, this is a nonprofit. We really love to use your tool towards creating this amazing stuff, and how great would it be if you had like a permanent name on our banners at our conferences, because we use your tool inside of our foundation to create these wonderful diagrams. I don't know, I'm like, once again, spitballing here, but in the world of nonprofit, you want to give free stuff, maybe a name on a banner will do it for them.
Yeah,
I think it's not a bad idea.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, David. It's not a bad idea. I mean, Jay keeps throwing good ideas and saying, "Oh, but you know, I'm just spitballing." I think this is a valid ideas. Don't shy away from your ideas.
I used to pick up a box of government cheese and bread and everything like that when I was a kid. You gotta understand, if I could get it for free, damn it, I'm going to try.
Jay, to answer your original question, though, I don't think there's any prohibition against a particular kind of tool. That said, if it starts getting expensive, there's all sorts of complications, and a lot of them that are expensive won't let you just move the license around. So, that doesn't make it a killer. Just something to be aware of.
Well, to that, right? So yeah, it's expensive, right? But so is silver, gold, and platinum level sponsorships, right? So if we reached out to them and said, hey, why, you know, you guys make a tool, right? You have to build it. You need developers to do that. Right. This is a place where we're talking about open source security. I'm sure you use open source in your development practices. So why wouldn't you want to be a part of this organization? Oh, guess what? Not only can you become a member, one of the 105, now I have 106 members, but to pay for that membership, you could throw in a couple of licenses to this tool that we're using. Like once, I mean, look, I'm just saying, you know, what do they call it? Bartering, right? The barter is real, right?
Barter works. Barter
Yeah.
works.
So just to settle this issue, I mean, I just looked, Xmind app is 60
Mind
bucks a year.
Much?
60 bucks a year,
Oh,
the pro version. So I don't think we need to
I-
spend more time on this. We already spend
Yeah.
more money talking about how
Spend
much
more
it
money
might cost.
talking about it.
Yeah, I think there are some other software which for graphics that are that are
Yes,
seriously
yes.
expensive. So good to
So
know.
this
All
one
right.
is not one of them. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can do petty cash on that one. All right.
so for next steps, I'll follow up with Bob and see if there is a mandate that I am summoned before the governing board to share this with the full board. But I expect at some point we will start doing dog and pony show around the presentation and around our example diagrams. So if you have any feedback or comments in the interim, please feel free to make changes, additions, requests for subtractions. Go ahead and do that. And then at some point, I know we will have a call between us and the TAC. So I would appreciate your flexibility in trying to participate in that call as we potentially go through, like we lay the mind map out and kind of start walking through things as an example. So I know that we'll have some requests of our time. So just as you are available, please be flexible and consider helping, assisting. Is there anything else we want to talk about? Do we have any new diagrams today? Anyone do anything new? Applesauce. Any other topics we want to discuss today? All right. I am going to go mentally prepare for my 2002. What's that?
Sorry, Crop. Before you go, so what is actually the next step?
Before the next meeting, if anyone has any particular feels or comments, put that into the PowerPoint, the slide deck. I would like to start collecting personas. So if you have some personas you feel these diagrams will want to address, whether user stories, user journey, however you want to phrase it, we need to figure out some perspectives that we want to address some of these diagrams for, probably as a future step, but I'd like to have that in our back pocket. And then I'll let you know when we will be asked to talk about this again with other groups.
Yes, I would like to move from, hey, there are options, to these are the ones we're going to do.
Yes.
As a minimum, and how we're going to do it. I really, we don't need to make all those decisions today, but I'd like to get to that point.
No, and some things like the hierarchy diagram, for example, that's super easy. There's no, aside from maybe prettying it up, there really probably is like zero additional work we have to do on that particular view. But as we get into like the CI/CD view, we probably all will need to go have conversations with each of the working groups. Do you agree with how we've laid this out? Are there any other new things you're doing we need to account for? So that'll probably be some future near-term steps for us, is kind of beating the bushes and going out and talking to the actual working groups.
Yeah, and you'll notice
I have an idea.
Sorry, go ahead, Jay. Okay, since you can blame me for that salsa mapping diagram, I had to create some new categories for some of those because some projects were cool but didn't obviously fit, and that's okay. I think it would be unsurprising if we end up creating one or two more categories, and I think that's just fine. The goal is to try to make it clear adequately enough. And one thing that I think is helpful, especially in the web view, probably obviously not so much on the printed version, but for at least a web view, all of those links are clickable in the original one. And I really would like that capability to continue. Because I can easily see that showing up on the website of here's our hierarchy. You can click on any part. Here's more detail with all the various projects. You can see how they work together, and you can click on any part, or at least any of the names. And
I
think that
agree.
that's really helpful.
I totally agree. Obviously, I'm a web guy, so I wouldn't disagree on that. But the challenge is to sometimes it's not always obvious to know what is the primary link for a group. Is it that there some have a GitHub repo, but there's also websites like salsa.dev, right? Xtor has its own website. So do you link to the site?
Well,
do you link to the repo?
and things like the external hosting of potentially foundation projects will need to be a conversation we have with the TAC. Do we care? Do we need to start to influence those groups to move things?
For example, I think salsa.dev is, I mean, we do manage the domain and stuff, if I recall correctly. And they do make it clear that it's an OpenSSF project.
We want to make sure that's consistent.
Mhm.
And if one thing has a website, maybe other things need websites. So again, we just want to make sure, kind of figure out what the standards are. We want to the output to look at. So the three parts of homework: comments on the slide deck, collect any persona ideas, viewpoints we have to address, and then start to think about requirements for the final diagrams. Like it must be clickable. That I think is absolute requirement. Depending on where, if it's in a book, that's not quite as clickable as the web.
How's this? The source must be clickable.
Yeah. So start thinking about requirements. We'd like to see these diagrams. And then again, I'll let you know what I hear from the TAC and the GB.
I want to throw an agenda item
Please.
up there, something for us to talk about. We're not going to do that here. And conceptually, I mean, I'm working it out in my head, but I think it might be great for this group to create some sort of a maturity, like a working group or SIG maturity matrix, meaning is their README file updated? Do they have a scope? Is there, what, I mean, stuff like that, for us to create that, if ever asked, we have a place to be pointed saying, hey, these groups are still outstanding with these items per whatever policy is in place. If there is I'm hoping that the policy, if there's whatever policies in place or procedural, these working groups or these SIGs or these projects are still outstanding with these required need to have items for them to actually be working groups, SIGs, or projects. Maybe I don't know what that looks like. I'm trying to think about how that looks like mentally, and then how that gets maintained as well. I'm thinking about those two things, but I'd like to put that on the agenda for us to talk about, because that would be great for us to do.
Being the author of the PCERT Services Maturity Framework, I agree with that item. And I think we could eventually, once we get the criteria put together, we could offload that to the working group leads. That this is your checklist, and they report in quarterly to the TAC. So this will be part of those materials working groups will have to deliver to the TAC, so that we could keep that fresh.
To be fair, there is a set of criteria for certain levels, but that's not necessarily been taken and applied.
That's like the sandbox.
Right.
Emerging, whatever.
There's actually an incubation process image. I'll slip it in here.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no.
The life cycle, yeah. But so we have one already for the OpenSSF. The challenge is that not everyone's applying it universally. How can I say that kindly?
Well, it's not universally applied, and I don't think it gets
No.
down to the level of detail. Like your README MD is updated. You have a publicly published calendar invite with meeting minutes. So I think we can put together some of that to back that up. To maybe we follow that model and echo it. Maybe we provide feedback to alter it. I don't know, but I agree. I think that's a good task for us to think about.
There are some specifics, but I'm sure we could improve on it.
Yeah, it's probably like it's around number of main number of different maintainers or
Yeah.
contributors, number of meetings, that type of stuff.
And I'm thinking some form of a dashboard that gets presented at some point. Like, you know, I think for the TAC, for instance, I think the TAC should see that dashboard.
Mhm.
5 minutes, TAC meeting, see the dashboard, a working group, get your stuff together. I shrug, right? Yeah,
Yeah, if it's like a scorecardy thing that we can automatically go out and grab, I think that is very dashboardable. And would
But-
save working group leads a lot of time and typing. Yay.
Like I said, agenda item for the next meeting. I don't want to.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a good idea. It's good. I think that would be within our scope. All right, I'm going to go prepare for my 2022 review. Wish me luck. We'll talk very soon about my day job, not my fun job. Bye all.
I wish you luck, but I have every confidence in you.
Thank you.
Good fortune.
I'll do okay.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.